Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal-Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this week is Chad Roberts of eDiscovery CoCounsel. Chad founded eDiscovery CoCounsel in 2013 after a successful 20-year career as merits counsel representing consumers in complex litigation. Continuously AV-rated since 1996, Chad holds an engineering science degree from the Georgia Institute of Technology and graduated with high honors from Florida State University College of Law. He's been a litigation partner at both a large multinational law firm, Holland & Knight, as well as a small boutique trial firm. Let's see if I can talk properly today. A small boutique trial firm, Sporer & Dodd, and has won multi-million-dollar verdicts, as well as been lead trial counsel. At eDiscovery CoCounsel, he focuses on discovery motion practice in federal courts, as well as information governance, analytics, and information technology, or information retrieval technology. Chad, glad to have you here.
Hey, glad to be here, George. I have really been looking forward to this, and I've been thinking about it, and now that we're all out and about a little bit more, and I bumped into you a couple of times. We were at the trade show and we're in Gainesville at the UF conference, but you're so busy at those, you still don't have a great opportunity to just sit and visit with folks. And so if this is how we get to do it, that's fine. But I've been looking forward to catching up with you.
Yep, and likewise, I know you joined us briefly as an interloper at Legal Week, and in a carefully orchestrated, no doubt, move to promote the University of Florida conference, which was a great success. Any given session, we had about 1,500 people attending, right?
Remarkable. Yeah, remarkable.
And we're hoping for more for next year. But that's not why we're here to talk today. Instead, what I'd like is your reflections on what I think you call the golden triangle. So let's go from there.
Okay. So for a little bit of context, like a lot of lawyers that kicking and screaming come into the eDiscovery space by necessity or choice, our backgrounds don't always prepare us for the tasks that it takes and the approach that it takes to be successful at that. And so it was a more challenging transition for me than I ever imagined it would be. So,
well, let's start before we get farther into the triangle. Let's start with that transition, because most trial lawyers, and you were a trial lawyer, eDiscovery has not historically been of much concern to them. Obviously, you went down a different path. What happened?
Well, a little bit. So one is those days are over, even for contemporary trial lawyers. And my own particular path was looking backwards. I call it a failed retirement. Right? I was looking to transition. I'd been practicing, at a complex personal injury practice for a lot of years. You just get to a point where you can, and you're looking for something new to do. And so it started with my old partners calling up and saying, hey, can you come back and help us with this technical thing? Because you're kind of a gearhead, and I had a reputation for being a gearhead. So it started with folks, my brothers and sisters in the plaintiff's bar, asking to just get a little help on these technology things. And George, as you know, plaintiffs historically had a structural weakness in the EDRM and electronic discovery generally, because historically we were not producing parties. We were not heavy lifters in the producing party side of the discovery equation. We sent over our clients' medical records, and that was it. That was a wrap. We were done. And then we started receiving enormous data productions from producing parties in asymmetrical litigation. So we were collectively a group of lawyers that because we never had a big corporate client and went through the drill of having to produce electronic discovery out of its native environment into a producible, reviewable format, we just didn't know what we were doing. And it was a hard mountain to climb up. And so that's what I came back to, determined to understand that process. And this was years ago. And the first thing that I was steered to, Ralph Losey's lectures online sent me to the EDRM. And that's how I started, was down the rabbit hole of your work with the EDRM historically. And then the rest has just grown, crazy growth with the need for this on the plaintiff side.
So I've got a couple of questions that will keep us still from getting to that golden triangle.
Okay.
But they're sparked by by one of the comments you just made. The plaintiff's bar, as you said, historically did very little on the producing side, was mainly dealing with what they got from the other side.
Right.
And that has changed.
Yes.
I'd like to go into how that has changed, but before we do that, to what extent do you think that, I mean, here's my thesis based on what you said.
Okay.
That attorneys in the plaintiff's bar, by and large, did not, because they hadn't had to do this work themselves, they did not appreciate either the complexities and challenges or the nuances of getting data properly identified, preserved, and so on. They thought it was a much easier, much simpler process than they were being told by their defense counterparts. And with the, unfortunately, I think, natural tendency of each side on the V not to believe what the other side on the V is saying, they took it more as a question of an issue of bad faith rather than an accurate assertion that this is really hard, difficult stuff.
It is hard, difficult stuff.
That led us down our own rabbit hole of increasing distrust each side of the other.
Yes.
Is that what was going on?
I would emphatically agree with all of that. And, it's the adversarial process, and it's that tension between the adversarial process of holding your cards. You don't get to know what questions are going to be asked when your client gets deposed. We've found through experience that not having it, that the adversarial process tends to, in the big scheme of things, promote truth, right? When things are more spontaneous and not disclosed. So it's like a game of football. You don't have to tell the other side what play you're going to run. You just go out and run it. And, that's the culture. It doesn't work with electronic discovery, right? It doesn't, it's not a good culture for conducting electronic discovery. even in the most adversarial of cases. And so we've always lived with that tension and that imperfect tension in trying to, build up a little trust that can mutually benefit a requesting party and a producing party. But it's been hard. It's been very hard over the years.
So here's my follow-up question, and then on that, with the increasing need, as you'd said, for the plaintiff's bar now to go through those steps themselves with their clients of identifying, preserving, and so on.
Right.
Do you think that portends a possible closing of the gap and easing of the tensions? Or is that just pie in the sky aspirations?
No, I don't. Well, certainly, look, the adversarial part's always going to be there. It's a blood sport, I hate to say, but it is. It shouldn't be. One of the nice things about the eDiscovery space is it's populated by folks that are, by and large, dealing with objective evidence. So it's, it is what it is. Let the chips fall. There's less, cringeworthiness of what a fact witness is going to say to deposition, for example. So there's
you get the cringe over before you get to the deposition.
Right. We all know what's coming, and it just is. If it's bad for you, it goes out the door and gets produced. It just, it just does. So so I would say yes, but having to be producing parties, for example, we always tell our clients, when you get these big bad ESI protocols and you write all this cool stuff in there about transparency and all these things, you have to read it backwards. You have to read it in the context that this applies to me as well. I'm going to have to do all these things. I'm going to have to agree to best practices and documenting the things I'm doing and the assumptions that I'm making about a search methodology. So if something doesn't turn up in discovery and then eventually turns up later, and why didn't it? You're going to have to go and revisit your whole workflow and search methodology to figure out why you missed it. And it needs just to be defensible. So all these things that plaintiffs are now more and more having to go through, I do think, because it's happened to me. I can just tell you it's happened to me personally. It has made us, I hate to use the word empathetic. I'm not going to use that word. Okay. So don't make me say empathetic.
I won't say it.
Okay.
I won't make you say it.
Let me say sensitive to the challenges of producing parties. It's scary to worry about missing something. It's scary to think that maybe there's some great source out there that is just off your radar screen and it gets overlooked. It is no question a challenging task. And yes, I think as plaintiffs are more and more pulled into having to produce the run-of-the-mill things of a consumer's electronic discovery environment, it's going to make us more sensitive to these challenges and tasks. And I got to say, I hope that would also relate to conventional institutional defendants, because the plaintiffs' discovery challenges now are the cutting edge problems we're having in eDiscovery, where the defense side of the big institutional clients, we kind of got those problems solved a decade or two ago, right? Email, we got that, right? We got that.
Yeah.
This proliferation of mobile devices and the way that we communicate now as individuals, we don't have that.
Right.
We're still stumbling and bumbling over that. So,
and I'm sure you and I have communicated in just that way, where we jump from email message to chat message to whatever else it might be. It's one continuous discussion,
all over the map, right?
But it spans multiple platforms.
It does. It does. Yeah. It's hard. So I hope, I hope our brothers and sisters on the institutional defense bar will also find a measure of understanding and the challenges that the plaintiffs bar now faces, because we don't have the cool tools that they have for all of the problems that we have in our production requirements.
So this takes us in a very, very roundabout fashion
Yes.
back to your golden triangle and the interrelationship between people,
Yes.
process, and technology. And all the time we hear that trope rolled out about people, process, and technology, it begins to sound trite, but it's not. What's your perspective on that?
So I thought this would all be easier than I found it to be, right? As a trial lawyer, you're like, oh, I've got the hard part, man. This lit support back office group, that's the easy part. It's not the easy part. Just try and do it.
Well, that said, I would never hold myself out as having been a trial lawyer, but I did try enough cases to know that is the hard part, because
it's hard.
The pressures you have to perform as perfectly as possible in the moment when everything's changing around you that's intense.
It's
you don't have quite that type of time-sensitive pressure in the same way and up in front of everybody with eDiscovery, but you're right, there are huge challenges.
It's a different kind of professional performance obligation. But lawyers and law firms historically are not great places to learn best business practices. They're just not, for a lot of cultural reasons. And project management as a recognized skill set, whether lawyers realize they're doing it or not, they're trying to be project managers. Even great litigators, turns out, are actually, whether they realize it or not, practicing traditional project management. And if you're a youngish lawyer and you're wondering, like, where do I go for guidance on all this stuff? The best advice I would give you is, don't Google best business practices, or don't Google how to be a great litigator or whatever. Go search out project management skills, and whether they apply to making airplanes for Boeing or an enormous construction project, building a nuclear power plant. Project management is a skill set and a craft in and of itself, regardless of the field in which it's being rolled out on, right? Which you're project managing. And so my own thesis is that when big law firms started doing beauty contests to their corporate clients and pitching their skills in electronic discovery and things like that, I think the corporate clients that did have a highly developed project management culture started listening and going, I'm not hearing any of those buzzwords, I'm not hearing them buzzwords like stakeholders and scope of work and all these things. I'm just not hearing it. And they started pushing back and saying, we're really looking for someone that has the same kind of culture that we do. So that when we say, Lean Six Sigma, everybody nods their heads like this instead of giving them a funny look. So I think that flowed back into the like the AmLaw 100 firms first, probably. And that notion that practicing law well and managing a litigation project well involved very traditional, well-established project management skills. And you can learn those. You can become better. You're not born a perfect project manager, but you can learn and you can get better. And that was the personal challenge of doing this that surprised me, George. I was a gearhead. That I was swept into this with the shiny new products like Reveal develops and rolls out all the time. I love that stuff. It's like candy for me. But when it came to executing, it became obvious that there were some other skill sets I needed to embrace. And it sent me down this journey of talking to people and how do you do this? And why does everybody want to work on your project? And some people are like, yeah, I'm not so crazy about working on the next project with this other person or organization. What makes organization and people more successful at this? And it steered me to the EDRM and project management. And so for a younger lawyer or a senior lawyer, you're even more at risk, by the way, if you're a senior lawyer, who's looking to hire a team and run these projects, this orienting your thoughts to the people and the process and the technology as an interrelated thing and kind of an approach to it. I think you'd be well served by that approach, being sensitive to people, process, technology, how all three of those things interrelate.
Not all project managers are the same, of course, nor are all project management processes. And project management in the eDiscovery and litigation arena is very different in a critical way from, say, project management with the construction of a new building or, renovation of our kitchen when that was done. I saw what they were doing.
Right.
When they redid our kitchen, everyone got up each morning and tried to figure out how to work together.
I know.
If you and I were on opposite sides of a lawsuit, every morning we would get up with two objectives. One, how do I win? And two, how do I make you lose?
And or just make you miserable in the process of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
So it's a heightened form, I think, if you will, of project management. But again, not all project managers are the same. Not all project management processes are the same.
Yeah.
What have you seen makes for a more effective project manager, a more effective project management process in the world of eDiscovery and litigation?
I think our shop is predominated by lawyer technologists, and we'll always be that way because that just brings a service perspective that is our choice of our business model. But you have to work hard at letting go of that lawyer role and get the mindset of a more abstract mindset of working the project with a project manager's those principles. And if you can get certified as a project manager by the like the Project Management Institute, it's one of the merit badges I aspire to someday. If I would love to have that merit badge of being a PMP, but the PMBOK, what is that, Project Management Book of Knowledge or whatever, these are all memorialized and there's textbooks about it. And so I think if you gotta quit being a lawyer a little bit and be more of a wonkish book learned project manager, you'd be well served. The challenge
I would be remiss at this point
Yeah.
if I failed to mention that ACEDS's Mike Quartararo has himself published a book on project management, really focused on eDiscovery and litigation.
It's usually at arm's reach. That's why I'm
I think it's out in its second. I think it's the second edition now.
Yep. Yes. It is. I would start there. I would start with Mike Quartararo's book. I would. For people wanting to embrace this. It's a nice way of describing the project management skill set in the legal context that you can get it. And it's like, what are stakeholders? And it's like, oh, okay. Here are the legal stakeholders on a litigation project. So I get that concept. Scope of work. Okay. I get that now. So great resource.
So if you ever go through the PMI, the process of obtaining their certification, I think you'll see some significant differences between how they approach project management and how, say, Mike approaches it. And I'm sure you're already well aware of some of the differences. Which ones come to mind for you?
Well, I think in both contexts of where I think they're similar, for example, is, there's a safety component in project management when you're making an aircraft for Boeing that's going to fly millions of passenger miles. And there's a safety component of, if you poorly execute your electronic discovery project in the context of litigation, it impacts the merits. Either you fail to have the evidence you should, or you bungle it up so badly that you put your client at risk for sanctions. And so you're in the mix of professional obligation there. So I think they have common denominators that way. But I don't know. We pretty much stick to the knitting, unless you have something in mind. We try to stay to the traditional structure of the project management skill set. All the phases of it, and the tasks and how they relate. So nothing jumps out at me that way, unless
So the one difference I think that comes to mind for me in a traditional project management scenario, you put together the project plan, you've got various dependencies laid out, you've got timelines, so you have to do this before you do that, you do these things in parallel. You try to manage all of that and keep everybody on track. You recognize that things can go sideways. Our kitchen, for example, they ripped open the ceiling, they looked up,
oh no,
and they called me in and said, you need to come in here now and look at this.
right.
You have a bathroom right above your kitchen. The wood under the tub is rotted. This could fall through at any minute. We need to stop and do other stuff. So that delayed everything by 1 week and increased our cost along the way. Those things happen, but they aren't what you expect to have happen in a major way every day.
Right.
Litigation, I think you expect to have happen in a major way every day. Someone tried to derail your project and your process. I think that's the biggest difference, and accounting for that and building in the flexibility and elasticity to deal with that, I think, is the biggest difference.
In the adversarial process, right? That things change, like a new request to produce comes in after you've worked up a previous one. And do you have enough experience to, we have this mantra, we try to only touch a document once, right? Touch a document just once. And so regardless of what the request is, we try to put our requesting party hat on and think about the merits and think about the affirmative defenses, think about what expert witnesses are going to need, what our merits counsel is going to need for fact witness depositions, what they're going to need for dispositive motion practice, like preemption hearings or Daubert hearings. We try to think through all of those eventualities and try to get the review sort of omnibus on the front end to cover all those things, so that our clients only have the expense of doing this once. And so that's different. Yeah, I agree that is your scope is it shifts. It's always a moving target, and one deposition and one person says one wonky thing and the whole tenor of the case, goes off in a different directions, like your bathtub does. And so it's just part of the fun, I guess. If you want to call it that, it's just part of the fun and mutual misery of this, which, you generally 6 months later, you're laughing about over a beer with a gang of everybody when the project's finished. But, at the time, it's pretty miserable. Yeah.
Well, that's a negative sounding note to close on. Can you give us something a little more positive here?
This is a great practice area for young lawyers. And so listen, I went off on a lot of directions in my career. I got interested in a lot of things that just didn't have longevity in the legal space, and they were fun and intellectually fun. But if you're a young lawyer, my little 2 cents for you is get some litigation experience first, or some transactional work doing mergers and acquisitions and second reviews and second requests and due diligence things that can use this technology. So get a little bit of that under your belt first. And if you want to transition to this as a practice, that it is the most exciting, the most intellectually stimulating. It's cutting edge. As you know, every 12 months, everything's different. Like 12 months go by and everything you're talking about 12 months ago is like a yawner, and there are new problems. And so it's very stimulating that way. And it's just a good place for folks. And everybody has the right personality to settle down into it, for finding the place they like in it. So keep watching series like yours. You've given people an opportunity to hear from a lot of the breadth of interesting folks you talk to is remarkable. So I would tell folks, buy Mike Quartararo's book, spend a Friday night after dinner looking at your prior interviews, and you'd be off to a good start. And it's a great practice area to head down in.
Well, I really hope people have something better to do on a Friday night than that. But thank you, Chad, very much for joining us. Chad, again, Chad Roberts is the founding partner of eDiscovery CoCounsel. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Chad, thanks so much, and let's find another opportunity in the near future to lift a beer.
See you, man.
Okay, we'll see you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.